Thank you so much, Amy, for joining me here at Spotlight. Could you give us a quick intro of yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Amy. I am the CEO and co-founder of Moody, which is a hormone health app that improves your mental health, understanding essentially how your hormones are impacting on your mental health, and then being able to provide personalization around diet, exercise, mindfulness, but all designed for the female body and based on the science of how your hormones actually impact on the fundamentals of your well-being.
So you said hormones are the foundation of emotional intelligence. Could you explain further how hormones impact our decision making, especially in high pressure moments or when you've got a lot of stress?
So, I mean, look, there are many components to mental health. I think hormones have an impact because if you think about the interplay of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, and let's just take a menstrual cycle as the use case where you have a fluctuation towards ovulation with rising estrogen and then rising progesterone and declining estrogen towards your bleed. The way that estrogen impacts on your cognitive function, on your focus, on your memory is different for each person. But to some degree, there is a kind of average, which is that it tends to be for women more of a kind of elevating hormone. So I always describe it as something which gives you your kind of extrovert characteristics, whereas the inversion is true of progesterone, which is more of a sedating hormone. Again, this is the averages, so there are obviously variability in this, but by being able to understand those core principles, it's not to say that you would necessarily make different decisions in certain environments. And the same applies for pregnancy trimesters, even postpartum, even perimenopause, where when you understand that there is an impact because of these different factors, you start to have more time because you give yourself more of a break. You have the ability to, go into more of an understanding of the world from the lens of a female viewpoint. Whereas what we've really been conditioned to feel is the world, you get up every day, you feel the same. So in a high pressured example, which you gave, you go into a meeting, you're wanting to ask for a pay rise, for example, there will be different ways in which you structure that information, potentially even respond to whatever the environment is, dependent on your hormonal physical health. So again, not to say that you're not going to have that meeting at that point, but you're going to prepare in a slightly different way. You're going to be maybe doing something the day before that's slightly different than you would if you were in a different mindset. So it's really giving you the tools to see the world through the lens of your own body, your own chemistry, and just retraining women to think about their hormones as a component factor in your decision making, in your mental health, and hopefully allow women to be more empowered in their everyday.
Yeah, like hormones are having more and more of an impact that we realize on just our everyday lives. And I guess, you were running a really successful agency before founding Moody, right? And what was that kind of light bulb moment that you had where you realized that women need better access to these hormonal insight?
I had a business before which took me all over the world. I was traveling everywhere. I had incredible relationships and brands working with people like Nike and Microsoft. But the problem was that I didn't really understand that you can't just go. So like many women, I burn out. This is not a new piece of information. I think there's a lot of conversation about burnout, but there isn't a big conversation around the things that you can do from a preventative perspective to at least help your body and your adrenals reduce stress. For me, working with a big sports brand, my default was to go for a 5K run, right? I was feeling stressed. I was feeling overwhelmed. I was actually compounding the problem because going for high intensity training when you're under a huge amount of stress and a huge amount of pressure for certain points of the cycle, for example, compounds stress because they release more cortisol, more stress hormones, which when you're in that state of mind, although it might cognitively clear you from a physical, chemical perspective, it doesn't help. So again, it was this realization that it doesn't matter how much women are told that they need to do everything and have everything. If we don't understand the fundamentals of the way our brain and body works, you're setting yourself up for failure. So the vision for Moody was really to give women the tools to better understand the way their brain and body works, to be able to show up in a world that's inherently unfair. I think it's a very powerful thing. And people often say, well, how do you measure that? And I think measurement in the amount of women using it, so we've had hundreds of thousands of women using it, the ability to have people tell us this helps me and I stick with it. And when I need to understand what's going on, I use it. And the fact that we're still a world first in mental health and hormones says everything about the way the world perceives both mental health and women.
Yeah, thanks. Like you mentioned, you've helped over 100,000 women connect with their body and their mind better. What are the lessons that you've learned about what users really need that they're not actually getting from traditional healthcare?
So I think, look, health is overwhelming and there's a lot of information. What we're not trying to do is give someone a PhD, right? What we're trying to do is just help you understand you better. And I think there are some very simple pieces of information that you should learn in school. So if you come back to the way we learn about hormones, I think it's still inherently biased towards this male experience, which is how to get pregnant, how to avoid it. So you learn about it actually, ironically, from a male gaze, like really from their perspective of what the risk to the female fertility experiences. Whereas if you learn about how they make you feel or how they maybe change your metabolism or how they might impact your sleep cycle, you're actually then learning it about yourself. I think the lesson learned is not to overwhelm people with information. And I think across the board, look, we're not diagnosing people, we're just giving them existing research that's been synthesized into a very simple deployment mechanic where you can use it to be able to say, okay, well, this is the day in which this is relevant for me. Whereas no one's going out and reading research papers about the interplay of estrogen and progesterone on your postnatal experience or on your pregnancy loss experience or on, it's just not happening. So how do we make that research that does exist more easy to access and then also make it very simple for people? So not overwhelming with large banks of data and large information plays, just today, this week, what does this mean for me? And, there's value in that. I think one of the challenges is that everyone's trying to run to an end goal of these longevity events where you're integrating all these hybrid points. That's brilliant for a very clear echelon of society who have access to a higher tier of healthcare and a higher tier of education. For the 2.5 billion women who don't have that, how do we just start with helping women understand that this is a thing? Like that's where we wanted to go in. So I think simplicity, tangible insights based on science, and just a re-education of self, really. And it's very easy to overwhelm people very quickly. So keeping it simple is really key.
That
Makes a lot of sense. I've seen that your app uses AI to personalize insights. Could you maybe break that down? What that means for someone who is skeptical of AI and protective of their personal data?
Well, I think first phase, you can't put generative AI front facing to any person without having the risk of something being said that's not true, right? So none of our AI, none of our models are front facing to a consumer. It feels generative because it's learning from a machine learning perspective. So it's using the machine learning to learn your rhythm from a series of data points that you're inputting or that you've input at the beginning of the experience, which are fairly low touch. Like, are you menstruating? Are you not menstruating? When was your last period? When's your baby due? Like whatever it might be, that's the key signifying factors of where you are in whatever cycle we're tracking against. The machine learning model, and the difference between a machine learning model is never generating text or information for you. It's just predicting the average length based on a series of different variables, right? The content that we produce is done with AI. So synthesizing large banks of research into insights. And our AI models are proprietary. We built them ourselves and they're very good. But then those insights are reviewed by a doctor or a clinician across both psychiatry and endocrinology, so brain and body. The reason that's important is that it means it's generating it for you at exactly the moment you need it to give you the context, but it's not generated with any risk of hallucination, right? So it means that you're not feeding into an AI model. So there's not the feedback loop of whatever your data is going into a kind of ether of data. That means we're out of control of it as a you. So I think it's important to break that down. And thank you for that question, because it's really easy to slip into this state of, well, I want more and more information about myself without actually qualifying that information and also qualifying the safety of the data in this space, which ultimately is going to be dangerous in the future. So I think it's really important that people make decisions about these products. And there will be a large percentage of women that never want to use technology in this space. And that is 100% okay, right? It's totally fine. It's great if people are willing to do the research, do the reading. But for 80% of people, that's not the case. There isn't as much of a consumer understanding about this in terms of the risk. So we've done the diligence and we care because we're a team of all women and we came into this from a data viewpoint. Like my business before had data integrated into it in an advertising context, and my co-founder is a data analyst and machine learning engineer. So we've come at this from a viewpoint of, would we feel safe using this product? And would we feel safe in the future to know where our data is being held? So thank you, because people don't often ask about that. And even the difference between machine learning and AI, right? There's just a lot of buzzwords, a lot of complexity to this, but in simple terms, ethically handling things in a way that we trust is safe for both the user and for us.
Great.
Another question is specifically related to PMDD. If someone is just starting to suspect something like PMDD or just feeling like something might not be right with their cycle, what's the kind of low barrier step that they can take using Moody to start understanding the symptoms without getting tech overwhelmed?
Absolutely. And that's one of the most powerful use cases we have for this, right? It's because if you know that your manic episodes are directly linked for the week before your bleeds, that is a signifier that this is PMDD. So misdiagnosis of PMDD often gets categorized as either depression or bipolar. The difference with those is the fact that this is directly linked to the drop in estrogen and rise in progesterone and the effect on your brain. Therefore, any doctor in the process of a diagnosis is going to ask you to go away and track when your symptoms are occurring, right? So that is the most powerful asset you have, is before you even go into a doctor, feeling as though you understand, one, what you're looking for, and two, how you're explaining it, because you can show them the data, right? It's not in a diary, which can be imperfect, or even though logging in an app in theory can be more imperfect, but it's much more quantified and it's over a period of 3 cycles. So what they will say, you'll be dismissed if you don't go back with kind of enough data, one, because they'll say this could be, but if you can go and say, I've done 3 cycles, the exact moment in which the manic episodes appear is this day or this phase. This was how extreme this one was. This is how extreme this one was. This was the other symptoms associated. And this is how long it took me to get over it. You can't be argued with, right? It's not I Googled my symptoms and this is what they told me. I didn't ask ChatGPT. It's there in black and white. And I think one of the things that's really important in a process that's incredibly harrowing and often very triggering and traumatizing for women because they haven't been listened to is feeling as though you're not armed with the information or feeling as though you're not able to communicate properly. So I think some of the most moving stories that we've had women say, this saved my life. Like I was suicidal and this was something that allowed me to have the power to go and explain to my doctor where this information was triggering me and when it was happening.
I can completely relate because I have PMDD myself, and that kind of tracking has really helped me.
And I would add as well as a point is that you just don't remember it. It's a much bigger step to start writing down, grab a notebook and start scribbling probably very unintelligible things at that moment rather than just a slider or tick boxes.
It's also feeling like you're not just putting some information down that's not going to be heard. We've deliberately chosen to speak to our users through the tone of voice of the app as an informed friend, colleague, nurse, someone who's not diagnosing you. We're not a doctor, but we are someone that's giving you the environment and the support and the space to be heard and be seen and feel supported is the objective. And I hear from users that's what it feels like too. So I think we've delivered against that.
Yeah, no, I can confirm. It's definitely very, very strongly. Now, looking into the future, what's your vision for Moody in, changing not just health and individuals, but also the bigger picture?
I think the biggest power we all have is to be able to advocate for ourselves. The best evaluation tools you have are your own body, right? If you need to know what you're looking for, it's a language. So giving millions of women the power to understand their bodies and being able to change a conversation around mental health that moves it away from this, let's all do meditation and we'll all be well, into you have to know what the gradient and the scales are of different mental health conditions without having to be a doctor, so we can advocate for ourselves better, right? So I really believe the future of health technologies in this space is building towards better consumer advocacy, which is definitely the case. But we have to also differentiate in difference. We have to differentiate in difference of sex, so between male and female, and race as well, because those differences are very real. The world around us responds in a different way depending on our sex and our skin color. And therefore, if we're really going to truly understand a more holistic viewpoint and any more inclusive health system, we have to be able to build things for those experiences. So, yeah, for Moody, certainly being the kind of go-to for women's mental health, but in the world, that being valued. So the problem being that, people often say, oh, that's a great vision, but mental health is a nice to have, not something that is a foundational part of your life, which blows my mind to this day that that's even questioned. But yeah, how the world is designed pretty poorly in some areas, I would say.
Yeah, right. You're fighting the good fight.
Well, I think it's contributing in whatever way you can, right? I don't think that there's anything you can do other than try. And I really think that the thing that blew my mind was that there is research and science in this space, right? There's many areas that there's not. And it's harder for us to build into a perimenopause space, actually, because the research isn't quite as good, if I'm honest. But when it comes to menstruation, pregnancy, postpartum, even pregnancy loss to some degree, there is research to show how these things interact with our brains. It's just no one's given anyone access to the information. So I think that there's a big shift happening. It just needs to happen faster, to be honest. And that's one of the reasons why we decided to build this as a subscription product for women, because there isn't the funding out there to fund these projects. So we need people to prove that they want it through spending on a subscription at £36, €36, whatever a year, which is not a huge amount of money considering how much a coffee costs nowadays. But that there's value to this for people's decision making. There's value to what we've built, that then drives the growth rather than trying to lean into, well, let's get a load of white dudes that have access to capital to fund it. Because to be honest, I tried that at the beginning and it just didn't work. Like, no one cared. So it's happening. Just maybe could be a bit faster, but yeah, all in the same boat, trying to do the bit.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of
Well,
course.
thank you so much as well for taking the time out of your super busy schedule. I am a parent myself, but 2 young children, so it's a big
Oh, congratulations. Yes, it's okay. It's just that thing where women are supposed to do all the things. And I'm like, that's not setting women up for success. It's not physically possible. But when you have the right energy and the right momentum, you can do a lot. And so I think no one works harder than a working mom, if I'm completely honest, because the ability to multitask across multiple factors of your brain and your emotional spectrum is something of a marvel. So, well, it was lovely to meet you as well. And I hope helpful.
All right. Well, thank you so much and have a lovely rest of the day.
Take care. Bye.